Joining us now to unpack the new ruling and the NSA's defense of its widening surveillance practices, a reporter who broke this story, Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, first, your reaction to a rather strong ruling here from a federal court today, finding that the NSA's data program is likely unconstitutional.
It's an extraordinary ruling, Ari, and it's an absolute vindication for two specific attributes. One is it's a vindication of the constitutional rights of American citizens not to have very intimate information collected about us without even a sniff or a hint of suspicion, let alone probable cause, as the judge ruled. It violates the crux of the Fourth Amendment's guarantee against those kind of searches. And it's also, I think, a very important vindication for our fellow citizen, Edward Snowden, who came forward because, as he said, he found out that the government in secret was violating our constitutional rights and could not in good conscience let that stand. And he was branded a traitor and a criminal by media outlets across the country, including the one that we're speaking on. And yet here's a court saying that the very first program that he revealed through our newspaper is in fact a profound violation, an assault on the basic rights of all Americans. And I think there's pure vindication.
Yeah, well, it is very interesting. No matter where people come down on their view of Edward Snowden personally, today you have a federal judge, a respected one who was appointed in 2001, has been involved in many cases, saying what others have charged, that the aspects and the expansive nature of this surveillance is not constitutional. That's the likely finding from this judge. I want to read another point from the ruling. The judge writes that the almost Orwellian technology that enables the government to store and analyze the phone metadata of every telephone user in the U.S. is unlike anything that could have been conceived in 1979. Glenn, as you know, he uses that date because several people defending the program have said that earlier cases regarding something called a pen register, basically earlier protections of a certain kind of surveillance, make all of the broad surveillance okay. What did you read into that discussion there, rejecting that precedent?
Yeah, just one quick word about this judge, Judge Leon. I've seen on Twitter and elsewhere some progressives trying to make hay of the fact that he was appointed by George W. Bush, and it's true, he was. But he's not one of these kind of judges who is a partisan hack. He actually was one of the most aggressive judges in ruling against George Bush's detention programs at Guantanamo. He's one of the most respected judges in the country. As an advocate for civil liberties and constraints on the NSA, you couldn't have asked for a better judge. And
let me jump in on that.
Sure.
And say, yeah, I mean, I think that there's no doubt that this judge has a record of standing up to administrations of both parties, and he was appointed by Bush, but on the Guantanamo case, particularly in 2008, took on that administration. He has been someone who has rejected claims on security from both administrations. Your thoughts, though, on the rejection of the precedent from the 70s?
What he said was crucial. He said in 1979 the Supreme Court approved a very limited form of collecting one person's phone records for a limited investigation. And that has absolutely nothing to do, essentially, with what the government is doing now, which is collecting all people's phone records and then storing them for 5 years and engaging in very sophisticated forms of analysis so that they can trace who our network of associations and friends are, what we do in life, who it is that we're speaking to, that it's a different universe technologically and even legally from what the court approved in 1979, and he said that had nothing to do with this program.
Yeah, there was actually an extended discussion there where he quotes Justice Sotomayor and the discussion that phones today actually have so much more of our personalities and our personal lives, and he refers to political, personal, and sexual associations that can be in your phone. And so that allowing the NSA to go in and just vacuum that all up without probable cause, this judge says is a big change. I also want to get you in on what the Obama administration's panel has reportedly been doing. It's early yet, but as we mentioned in the lead, there are reports that they actually want to rein in some of this surveillance as well. Your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the fact that they want to rein some of it in is also a vindication, I think an important one, of Edward Snowden and what it is that he did in sacrificing his own self-interest to bring all of this to our attention. But I also think it's worth noting that this surveillance panel, like most of these kind of advisory panels, was stacked with loyalists to President Obama. Obama, people who were expected to essentially okay whatever it is that he wanted, and yet even this panel said that some of these programs go too far, and the reforms are really very, very mild. I think most people at the ACLU and civil libertarians say that it doesn't go anywhere near far enough, and yet you already see the White House saying, oh yes, our own panel has said the NSA should be separated from the military infrastructure, but we're not going to do that. And so there's this battle, I think, underway to say, are there going to be real reforms or fake symbolic gestures to placate the American people and pretend that there are reforms? That's the debate that's now going to be before us.
You mentioned the ACLU and the Obama administration. We actually have representatives from both later in this broadcast to discuss it. My final question to you is, what do you say to folks who look at this and say, well, this means that some of the leaks were unnecessary, that people didn't have to violate the law to get this information out because sooner or later our courts would oversee these programs?
These programs have been going on for years. The Obama administration has done everything they can successfully to prevent not only public disclosure, but any form of judicial adjudication. Any reasonable person, even opponents of Edward Snowden or defenders of the NSA, would acknowledge that the only reason we're having these debates, the only reason the court was able to rule on this, and the court itself said this, was because of the reporting that we were able to do thanks to Mr. Snowden's coming forward and blowing the whistle on them.
All right, Glenn Greenwald, a busy day for you. Thanks for spending some time with us. Still ahead, we're going to continue